guest today is Maria Ortega Garcia. She is an embodied language coach and poetry therapy practitioner. Maria helps her clients to express themselves in an authentic way rather than solely through imitation, and to find resources within themselves. In our conversation, we talked about her love for learning different languages. She believes language allows us to discover more about ourselves and connect with others more deeply. We talk about some of the blockages we face in life and how evoking emotions can help us to be more expressive. We touched on the topic of nonviolent communication, how replacing judgmental language with empathy-centered language can help improve our relationships with others and with ourselves. She also gave a great tip in the terms of how non-native speakers can be more spontaneous in their conversation, emphasizing the importance of slowing down and breathing naturally. We talked about identity, projection, fear, and its effects in our life. Maria also talked about her book, Weaving Words, The Alchemy of Languages. We start our conversation with Maria introducing herself.
Well, I am an embodied language coach, which is kind of a communication coach and a language coach. I help students, or I help people who are learning a language or relearning a language for heritage language cases. And I help them find ways to express themselves really in an authentic way, rather than just, imitate what they see in or what they are told in books, or when imitating accent from movies, or imitating the accent of the language itself. So what I help them is to find, I give them tools to find the resources within themselves, and for that we work with embodiment practices, mindfulness practices, and writing. So I am also a poetry therapy practitioner, and so poetry is for me is the way I access the language, because English is not my native language, and Spanish. So for me, the way I found authenticity, and I found my way to express confidently in English was through poetry. Yeah. And that's something that I do with my clients.
So you also speak French, German, and you're also learning Celtic.
Yeah. Well, I don't German. I cannot say I speak German. That's something I'm learning. Well, I was learning, but yeah, it's was a difficult language for me. I do speak French, and I am learning Irish at the moment, just because I love languages and I love what it opens up. Not only, obviously, the main thing is that it opens up doors, you can travel and connect with other groups of people, but also what it is more interesting for me is what opens up inside of us. Yes. Kind of we access different parts of ourselves that just come naturally when you start thinking in another language. That different mindset that exists in the language, kind of it is embedded in you, kind of a different computer program. So it allows you to think in a different way, and that for me is just so interesting. And
what inspired you to work with non-native language speakers to find their voice?
Because I grew up believing that I wasn't good at languages. First of all, because I used to be a really shy person. So speaking, using my words in groups was really, really hard. And that has a consequence that even in my native language, I wasn't great. I could write in Spanish very well. I could write in my native language very well, but I couldn't really use it verbally. because I was so shy. And then I started learning English in school, and it was not a great experience. I could pass all my exams or my written exams, but I was not able to communicate verbally in the exam or when I was traveling. So I remember the first time I traveled to England, I couldn't have conversations. Like the words that I could read books, but I couldn't use my words. So there was something there. I realized that there was a there was a gap between how the language was taught and how I could use it. Like I couldn't use it. So obviously there was something wrong. And I refused to believe that it was me. Because I think that, yeah, well, at the beginning, I thought it was me. But yeah, over the years, I thought, well, no, it cannot be me. There is something here that it is missing in the education I received, or there is something within me, in my mindset, or there is some blockages I have that my teachers are not seeing. And then that's why I started kind of exploring what was going on, why I couldn't use my English, use my words. And I happened to realize that it had nothing to do with the level of the language I had. It happened, yeah.
That's very interesting, because
So
I get a very high score in IELTS, but still I find it sometimes it's hard for me to apply all those vocabulary and grammar and not make a mistake. And maybe sometimes in a different situation, it become harder. But I stopped just judging myself. So I just totally accept the way I speak.
Yeah, and that is part of the thing. It is kind of understanding that there is that we are judging ourselves, that we have this ideal of the language, that it is out there, something that we have heard or we are told that that is the proper way of communicating in a non-native language, and we try to get there, and in trying to get there, we are in a way blockaging our own expression in the language. So there has to be a non-judgment element, starting with the way I speak the language. As long as I have enough words and structures and all that, the way I use the language is perfect, and nobody can tell me that it is not. And then from there, you work on other things, is how to have more words or how to be more authentic in your expression. But that's another layer.
And what do you mean being authentic with language?
Okay. When I talk about authenticity, is when I can communicate in a non-native language using a vocabulary or words that are meaningful to me, but that are still that still make sense to the other person. And that comes from emotions, so being able to express emotions, being able to, for me, I'm talking about an evocative language, something that evokes an emotion or an image in me, and that is still also understood by the other person.
So you mean by being authentic, just being yourself?
Exactly, being yourself. And sometimes we find challenges, or I found with my clients and with myself, because there is, on occasions, we are trying to be so correct that we are trying to translate ourselves and our jokes and our ideas into the other language, and that cannot, I don't think that's possible, because humor, for example, is a very cultural thing. Right? So if we have, or depending on the culture that we belong to, we have different ways of seeing what's humorous, what's funny. And I think it is necessary to not trying to change or adopt another way of seeing humor. So, for example, I find that British humor is not my thing. I don't find it funny. So, should I try to adopt those jokes when they are not really my thing, or I can, or should I be able to express the way I am humorous? And of course, the problem here is that sometimes the other person doesn't receive the humor in the same way.
Yeah.
They don't find it funny. So what do we do with that? How do we deal with this situation when you're trying to be funny, you're being funny, being yourself, and the other person doesn't really get it? What do we do?
Exactly. It works both ways, though.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, if an Irish person say a joke, probably I can't laugh because I don't get it. I had to ask them, could you please explain that joke to me? What's that mean? And then I understand where it's coming from. It's come from, most of the time, from the culture.
Yeah, and it is the curiosity. So I think it is very important to bring curiosity into the conversation when we are talking with someone who has a different language. And I find that, and I don't know what your experience is, but I find that sometimes when we are living in a country that is not our own, and we are using a language that is not our native language, if someone tells us a joke, we ask, well, I don't get it, can you explain it to me? And then we do get it. But does it work the other way around? Like the trouble would be, or the ideal would be, that the native person is asking you when you're telling a joke that doesn't make sense to them, is, oh, can you explain it to me? Instead of kind of shutting down or just assuming that is wrong or assuming that is weird. So it has to be reciprocal, the curiosity.
Also, body language helps, I think. Sometimes you say something, but the way you're saying it, it's funny itself. So that's one thing I noticed. I used to hear the joke and smile with people or laugh, but I didn't get it. But I learned over time to not do that. So it's okay to tell them you didn't get it.
Yeah, and it is honest. Like, I think I do relate with that. I am recovering people pleaser person, so just to not offend, I'm just going to smile just so they feel okay. But yeah, that's the thing. There is so much more when we are in communication. Body language is essential.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that we get very caught up in using the language correctly, when I think that we can be, or we should be able to be more fluid in our expression. We can bring words that are coming from our background, from our mother tongue in the conversation, because we are also using our body, and we are pointing, and depending on the culture we belong to, and I think both of us probably are using a lot of our body and our gestures. That is part of the communication.
Exactly.
And that helps. And it only requires the willingness from both parts to communicate and connect.
I don't know if you answered this question I'm going to ask, but so imagine someone who knows the language enough to speak fluently, but it's still a struggle. In order to end that struggle or build correct sentences is in a spontaneous conversation, what is your advice?
My advice is always to slow down the conversation.
Yeah.
What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Is to allow ourselves to breathe, because often when we are in a conversation with someone, in a spontaneous conversation, we cannot prepare. We bring our nerves, our anxiety a little bit higher, because there is a little bit of stress. We are not 100% sure of our language, of our ability.
Yes.
So when there is a little bit extra stress, extra anxiety, we have less access to all our knowledge. We have this kind of tunnel vision, not super radical, but when the more stressed we are, the less we see or the less we access our knowledge, or, you know. So when we slow down the conversation, we slow down ourselves in a way. We allow us to breathe. And that seems a very silly thing, but I think, I don't know about you, but when I am nervous, I don't breathe. I can talk without breathing. I just...
That's a very interesting point, because I notice when I'm in a difficult situation, or even when I'm very tired, I can't communicate really well. And now I want to remember this, to just breathe and slow down.
Yeah, so just take a breather when someone is saying something and you feel like, sometimes, I don't know if you relate to this, I am obviously talking from my experience and the experience of some of my clients, is we want to respond immediately. Someone asks us a question and we want to respond.
Yeah. Yes.
And
usually,
so I think that what is important is, okay, I have the question, you can wait a second or three, me to take a second to breathe, and in that moment the answer starts to pop in our brain. And we can respond from a place of something, from a place of, from a state of a bit more relaxed. And also that helps us be in our body. And what I mean by that is that I think that sometimes we have conversations only involving our brains. It's just all very cerebral. And what happens then is that we don't know what's going on in our body, and our body very often has information that wants to be taken into account. It could be discomfort. Sometimes we are feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes we are feeling a little bit nervous. Sometimes we are feeling a weird vibe, you know, something is off.
Yeah.
And that has to be brought into the conversation, or into the or that has to be taken into account. Let's say that I am talking to you and I am feeling strange. Well, depending on what the situation is, I could say, okay, I am not feeling okay. I think I need to go. Can we end the conversation here? Or maybe if I know you a little bit, I can say, hey, I'm feeling a bit strange. I don't know what's going on. And we can talk about that and we can fix it, so that once our bodies are relaxed and we are feeling okay, we can continue having a conversation that is, you know, that's coming from a place of both of us being okay, both of us being respectful of each other, both of us being respectful of our own experience of the conversation. And then we can have a conversation that is honest, that it is real, and yeah, I think that, yeah, it's more interesting.
That is very interesting, because it's very important to bring awareness to our body in any situation, including when you are in conversation with other people. Sometimes it is possible to be in a conversation with people that you don't feel comfortable, and it's okay to walk out and say, I'm sorry, I need to go out, or just communicate with them if it's possible.
It is possible, and it should be a normal thing to do, I believe.
Your approach is very expressive. It's about how we express ourselves through language.
Yeah, we express beyond words, and that's something that we discussed, we touched when we are talking about body language. But my job is in everything that connects with words, the verbal expression, because that's where I've developed tools, and that's where my work has been. I have been a language teacher for many years, and now I moved on into this other realm of communication through language, or non-native language. I think is my dream would be if we in general could communicate authentically, and that's what I mentioned before, using words that mean something to us, that are not rehearsed or cliche, or because that is what I believe allows us to connect more. And I can connect with you if you are giving me, I don't know, if you want to express whatever you want to express, a memory that you had, using a very vivid language. My wish would be that all of us, we would express in poetry. Because you relate to that. You read a poem, and as long as you understand the words and the sentences make sense, you relate to that, because you can experience, you can understand the experience of the other person, right? If they are, yeah.
I'm totally agree with you. Like, I prepare question today. I prefer to come and talk and have a conversation and not do that. But I think it requires some sort of a really confidence to do that, because sometimes I can do that if I met an artist before, or I have understanding of what they do, so it's easier for me to do that. But that's something that is ideal.
I know, but we have to aim high. Okay, but no, I'm okay. So, but exactly, you mentioned confidence. That's essential, and also, I think it requires maturity, or maturity in the sense of self-awareness, and also awareness of the other person experience, to be able to communicate like that. And confidence is something that is achievable, is something that we can practice. Confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What I'm very interested is, you're a poet.
Yeah.
So would you be open to read a poem?
Oh God. I would. Yes, I don't have anything prepared, but I can pull up something quickly. Yeah, I started writing poetry when I was a teenager. I think that many of us started then, when you are very passionate and all these emotions are happening. So I started writing in Spanish, and then something interesting is that I stopped when I started to live in other countries. So when I wasn't communicating in my native language for a while, because I live first in France, then in English-speaking countries. And then a few years ago, maybe about 7 years ago, I started to write in English. And that was such an interesting experience. And of course, I had all my judgments saying, my critics saying, oh, you cannot really write poetry in English. Who are you to be right? Your English is not that good, and who are you to be writing poetry in English? But once you work through those blockages and all that, it was such an interesting experience to see the different images that writing in English evoked in me, as opposed to the images I had in Spanish. So that, for me, that's what I bring that to my work, because I find this so interesting and enriching for the conversation, for the for the communication.
So I start educate myself in some topics. So there are certain vocabulary they use that I learned those vocabulary in English. I don't necessarily know those vocabulary or the equivalent of that in my own language. So if I want to write about that, I am more comfortable to write in English.
I totally get that, because I've been living away from Spain for, I don't know, many years, or 15 years or something like that. And I go to Spain, I visit my parents, but I am not living, I am not existing in Spanish anymore, right? So there are words that do not come to mind anymore. A part of me, I feel that I am losing my Spanishness because I'm not practicing it. I'm not embodying it anymore. And like it is a challenging experience, I find, as immigrants or expatriates. Over time, there is a really interesting, I don't know, I don't want to judge it, but there is something that is happening with your identity, that in a way you are expanding and growing, but you are also losing parts of you, that because the communication, the words are not coming to you, that means the concepts the concept that was attached to that word is not in your native language anymore. It is in another language. And what does it mean? And what does it mean for your identity and your expression? It is an interesting evolution.
Identity always change, and identity is something that even you can pick it. You want to have this role or you don't. It's not something fixed.
Not at all. It's fluid. And I find sometimes that with identity, we tend to put ourselves in a box, and nationality tends to be one. But what happens when you are living away of your native country for a certain amount of time? Are you still only that, or you are also? And just to say that, so I don't know how comfortable, in my case, I feel Irish.
Yeah.
Right? But when you say that, there is a reaction. And I find that sometimes the person receiving, depending on what their nationality is, they may reject that. They might judge that and say, "Well, but you are not born here. No, you are Spanish because your passport says that." And it's like, well, yeah, I am Spanish, but I am also Irish. And there is nobody's business. That sounds a bit aggressive, but there is nobody else should have an opinion on how you describe your own identity and how fluid you are.
Exactly. There is something also is there is this being in between, that I'm not Iranian enough anymore and I'm not Irish enough.
Yeah, and there is going to the in-between places that you mentioned. That's something that I find it is the perception of the other. Like, it's not really, well, it could be you. I sometimes find that I am in between. But in general, the idea of not being enough of one thing, or not being enough, like not being enough Spanish enough, not being Irish enough, it is coming from the other person. How they are judging me, it's not coming from me. If at some point in my life I realize that I am Irish, there is and I'm not Irish enough. How is that even a thing? How can that be possible? I am either Irish or not, and that's my decision. I am happy, or I should be happy to adopt it as my identity. And that's one thing. It is when you are in relation to another person that person may or may not pass a judgment of how you decide to describe your identity. But that's on them. Like, you can be annoyed or not.
I totally understand what you're saying. But I feel a lot of times other people's judgment comes from their own projection.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody tell me something that it doesn't feel very nice, if I bring awareness that this is the projection, then I can be in peace with myself.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I love that you said that, because very often when we communicate even if we believe we are talking about the other person, we are talking about ourselves.
Exactly.
So exactly. So and that's what I mentioned before, that to have an authentic conversation, one needs to be mature. And what I mean by maturity is being self-aware enough of what you believe, what your ideals are, and where there is judgment in you, and what kind of judgment are you having of the other people, and what that judgment says about you. What are you really believing?
Exactly. Exactly. If I have like judgment, straight away I bring awareness to that, and then I start thinking, what am I projecting?
Exactly.
So if I say something to you, it's actually I'm seeing it in myself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's fascinating in a way. So interesting. Just the questioning, right, is being self-aware enough to question everything that you think, or everything that you verbalize, or every judgment that you project onto another person, questioning that and understanding why that is there. I really like, sometimes I often like to question about, well, why do I think this? Why is this belief in me? First of all, is this something that I have created? Is something that is cultural? Is something that I learned from my parents? Why is this here? And then I start, in a way, dismantling it. If I find it is aggressive or negative, or keeping it like, well, it's okay. I believe this. This is not harming anyone or me. Well, let's kind of stay. I'm thinking about when I was a shy person. And for many years, I would fight it. I would prepare myself when I was going to meet someone, or I would force myself to be in situations where I had to not be shy, situations that would really be stressful for a shy person, like being in groups or talking in public or whatever. I was super, super violent with myself. I thought, well, I don't want to be shy, so I have to have a battle against this trait of myself. And for many years, I kept being shy. Like it didn't really help. I could fake a little bit in certain situations. If I was feeling a little bit safe, I would be able to fake a little bit. But then the tension and the stress made the experience be super uncomfortable, something that I wouldn't enjoy. At some point over the years, I realized, like, well, this is not taking me anywhere. This is not sustainable. It's not nice. So at some point, I decided to accept that I was a shy person. Magic. In the moment I accepted that I was shy, and I was, even when I went into conversations with people, I would say, hey, I'm a shy person. Like in the moment that, yeah, I'm shy. So in that moment, the shyness slowly started to fade away. Not immediately, I would say probably a few more years of shyness, but a shyness that felt a little bit less bad. Like, I had my shyness as a friend, and there were even times a friend told me, well, what's the positive in this negative, so-called negative trait? Why is there? And there was protection. My shyness wanted to keep me safe. And then I learned to be grateful for that shyness and saying, hey, thank you for that, but I don't need this to keep me safe anymore. And it was just something so simple as accepting and being grateful for it.
Because in the moment you accept it, because when you don't accept it, one part of you wants to fight with the shyness and say, go away, I don't want to be shy. And the other part of you that is shy and say, that's not going to happen. I do my best to make you fail. And these two are in the fight. And in the moment you accept it, it means that you actually open your heart to listen. Why I'm shy? Maybe there is a reason. Maybe he wants to keep me safe. Maybe he wants to protect me. Yeah, that's very interesting. Like it's just you understanding if you experience that. And it's not complicated. It's actually very simple. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about listening. Like, I really love that you said that. Yeah, and also coming from, it is coming from the past. And what it is interesting is that we have created a very, very safe society. It's the society of well-being. We're comfortable. We have our apartments. We're protected from the elements. We are in very often we are protected from everything, so much that we are not even allowing, like, for example, for this pandemic, I think that it has broken all our framework. Like, we used to feel so safe, and now this happens and we are not safe, and we don't know what to do with it. We are going completely crazy with it. And that's the thing. I think that what was real in the past, maybe in the past, our ancestors developed these tools, and this is safe and this is not safe. Being lazy, for example, or the shadow things were dangerous, but we should be aware enough and questioning enough to question ourselves. Is this real now? Is this particular trait a risk right now? Because in the past, maybe a person who was the different one, being the weird one, being out there, or being had the risk of being expelled, being the outcast, being out of the tribe, and then you die. Like, that there was a real it's always about the death, right? Like,
that's very
scared of dying.
Yeah.
But now, being the person, maybe not, well, now you can be the weird one, but it's still being able to live. Obviously, we need community and we need our group of people, but maybe our tribe can be found somewhere else. So it is not limited to location. So right now, this particular trait that was the shadow and negative in the past, now it's fine, and I can still go on living happily, So it is questioning all these things, these beliefs that we have that are passed on.
If I believe there is something I need to be afraid of, I'm right, because I believe that.
Yeah.
But if I believe that I'm safe and my life is fine, again, I'm right, because I believe that.
Yeah, totally. And that's, sometimes it sounds kind of, the idea that whatever you believe is real, but it is true. It is
true.
Yeah.
Like, this is my choice. Do I want to live my life from fear?
It is very important to have these to lose the fear of dying. I think that we're going to die anyway, and I think that sometimes the relationship we have with death, and I'm talking about Western societies, is we are very scared of dying. So, as if it was the end. And well, then you have spirituality and different beliefs, and you can believe whatever you want. But if we lose the fear of death, our lives are much more rich, I believe. And of course, we are animals, and we have I don't know what the word is, the self-preservation kind of sense, and that's there, and we should listen to it, but that's in our body. So when there is a real danger, we know it, and exactly. We run, or we do something in general. So that is there. So why? I think that we need to trust our bodies more, that we know when there is a real danger, our body is going to sense it, and we will be able to. And then be a little bit more trusting with the rest of things, like, being surrendering a little bit to to what's going on, and not being scared that everything is a danger, because more often than not is not. We don't live in, we live in a very safe environment in general, and of course there are limitations there.
So there is something that is in our nature and want to keep us safe and is valid, and there is something that is in just our mind and is not valid.
Exactly. I think that our minds create stories out of repetition or passed on beliefs and many other things. But being in our mind prevents us when we, okay, so let's say that I am super anxious, I'm leaving the house and I am thinking everyone in the street is a risk to me. Everything, in the moment I leave the house, the weather, every person is a potential danger, is a potential murderer. Everything, if I am going with this state of mind, I'm going to be tense. I'm going to be so tense that if a boss comes towards me, I'm not going to sense it, because I'm here, I'm tense, I'm in tunnel vision, so I am not seeing, I'm not accessing the full range of my awareness. You need to be relaxed and trusting. You need to be in your body and trusting that you're fine as a natural state, to be able to see danger.
It's something that you find it within yourself.
Yeah, and it is about trusting that whatever happens to you is right. And if you have to die, then that's part of life. And if you, maybe the plan for you, or maybe your life was meant to be short. And it is heartbreaking and it is hard, but I don't think that is a problem. So I think, okay, I do believe that every human has a purpose, and they are here for a reason. They contribute in one way or another to whatever it is that's happening in this planet. So maybe I am meant to have a 40-year-old life. But maybe in these 40 years, I am meant to touch these people and make these people, or influence these people to experience this. And as long as I am doing that, well, if I have to die when I am 40, then I have to die when I am 40. I'd rather live until 90. But I mean, you know, life is meant to be lived, and is the purpose of one's life, I believe, is just to be on purpose, like just be aware of how your life affects or impacts others. As long as you're in there and you're trying to not have a negative impact on others and the planet, I think that dying is not.
Maybe something like, for me, when I go to nature or even watch a documentary about nature, I am always in awe. I feel like in the same time I'm special and I'm nothing. And how everything is so complex, so beautiful, and it's just so amazing. And then I feel like I am special and I can do something with my life, and I feel like I'm nothing, because all this complexity, beauty, and everything around me that is surrounded me, I am just part of that. And I'm not separate or special.
I agree with that. And I for me, it's the same thing. Is I find that we're just a part of, well, just, I should remove the just, we are a part of life in this planet, and maybe you can expand it to other planets as well, but we are part of this. And that is, we are a unique part. Yes, and we need to understand what our uniqueness is, so we can do what we are meant to be doing. But we are just a part. That's it. we are like a tree, we're like a bird.
Yeah, and it's
with no more
fascinating.
value.
It's fascinating to see how all these are working together. Sometimes I understand where this is coming from, because as you mentioned in a few minutes ago, it's everything is coming from the tribe, that it condition us to behave in a certain way. So you can't be really have access to that authentic self or be unique, because you're living from fear. And nobody talk about that, because they prefer that you have that fear.
So I wanted two things in there. One, also we should think of, is fear all this negative? And no, fear is keeping us safe. So there is something good about fear, and we have to be grateful for a little bit of fear, or with having fear under control. There is this metaphor, a friend, or I read somewhere, I don't know, that you have all these personas or personalities or all these elements in your life as you are driving, and you shouldn't be leaving fear driving your seat. But I am giving I'm making fear a male, but fear should be in the car as well, and fear can be there giving you its opinion. Hey, there is this risk, and you can listen and say, oh yeah, you're right, I'm going to follow, or no, whatever, I'm just going to go straight ahead. So fear has a role. The problem, and I totally am with you, when we are in fear, when we are living in fear, we are easily controllable. Because if someone, and it tends to be people in power who want to keep the power, they will tell you, hey, this is super dangerous, you can die, or you are not going to have these minimum basic things. If you do this, then you are going to die. We are in fear, where we follow those rules. But if we are questioning that fear, if we are questioning that voice that brings fear, and assess individually, well, is this right? Should I follow this or should I not? Then we have I think, a better chance to to go well, like to have a life that is worth living.
Exactly. It's like opening our heart. When you explain about your book, weaving words, the alchemy of language.
Yeah. Yes, it's that book's about trusting your heart and communicating. It is about people who are learning languages or who are communicating in a language that is not their native tongue. It is about listening. I think at some point I say shut down your brain, which may sound counterproductive, but I don't think it is. And open your heart and listen to your heart and listen to your intuition. Because when you have been studying a language or communicating in a language, you already have knowledge in there. I'm not talking to a person who has no knowledge in the language. I'm talking to someone who has been existing, living, studying a language. And there is so much valuable information that comes from our hearts and our guts, our intuition, this gut feeling.
Yeah.
There are neurons in there. When I read somewhere that there were neurons in our hearts and there are neurons in our guts, my mind blew. We don't have intelligence only in our brains. We have an intelligent body. There is an intelligence in every part of our body. So we need to be in it and open in our hearts and being open and trusting to the gut feelings we have. And maybe someone is telling us, you need to be scared of this. This is a danger, and you have to do this to avoid this danger. And then your reaction to that information is saying, no. You feel tense, you feel constrained. your body is telling you, well, you need to consider this, you need to assess this, you don't need to trust it 100%.
Yeah.
The information that it, or maybe your body is saying, no, yeah, that's true for me, and you follow that indication, that direction, it's fine. But you need to access how you feel. Your body speaks. Like sometimes you feel tense and constrained, or you feel a pressure in your chest, or something, nerves in your stomach, or that is information. That's so important.
When I was doing some reading in your website, you have a workshop.
Yeah.
And you talk about compassionate communication and none, which I loved.
Yeah.
And we also have like peaceful parenting, which is like just negotiate with your child. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, what I mean, well, in nonviolent communication, I realize even in myself that violence is very common in our communication towards others and even to ourselves. And what I mean, and what I like to work with my clients and with myself as well, if I'm honest, is this trying to bring empathy and trying to not be violent in my expression to someone else. So saying things, passing judgment on other person is violent. Correcting someone else's expression is violent. So it is about taking a step back and checking with ourselves, like, why am I correcting? Why do I feel the need to correct this person? That means that I don't think that they belong to my group, that I think that they are not good enough, or that I am separating myself. And so it is about questioning again. And yeah.
I think you're totally right, because I have a Spanish friend and he has a very lovely accent. And the way he talks and the way he expresses himself, I just love to listen to him. And I never feel I want to correct him or I want to say, comment anything he says. I don't, because I do really love the way he talks. And because I have acceptance of who he is, then I don't have a need to do that.
Yeah. And when there is that need has to be questioned. So, for example, that need tends to come when someone is talking in our native language. And I have experienced myself in the past. I used to be a Spanish language teacher. So when someone was communicating in Spanish with me, I had to restrain myself when someone said something that wasn't correct. I wanted to correct them because, and that is super aggressive. I was thinking, oh, the way I speak is the way to speak, which is quite,
I do have two questions. I know it's a long time we're talking, but I know you do one-to-one coaching. We talk about one of the way you work is through confidence, and you work through blockages. And then another one is authentic voice, that you work with the language mindsets. And then the poetry therapy, which is mostly related to emotions. So I think you explain, but if there is something that you can talk about this, because I know probably somebody listening to this wants to work with you.
Well, thank you for the question. In terms of the one-to-one coaching for confidence, is something that we've mentioned. I find that confidence is something that relies on the belief or the trust. When you trust yourself, you express confidently. So that requires questioning what blockages are there, what beliefs are there, why you don't feel that you can have a conversation in a non-native language. So it is through conversations, there's coaching and therapy, similar approach. So what I do is give tools over the different sessions, different kind of challenges, kind of homework, like in between sessions, I suggest the client to practice different things. One example is, I'm thinking about my few clients, is they were scared of speaking in Spanish in a group of native Spanish speakers because they felt like that they were not good enough. So my question was, well, if you reverse the situation, let's say that you are the native and someone else comes in and feels insecure and they feel that they cannot talk, what would you like this person to do with you, towards you? And sometimes it's, well, I would like the person to tell me that they are not feeling comfortable, that they are feeling a little bit scared, or that they need that we talk a little bit slower. So it is just, instead of shutting down and not speaking, it is being open and vulnerable and say, hey, I am a little bit unsafe, I'm a little bit nervous, can you speak slower? And that in the moment that happens, you're going to understand better. Then your confidence is going to increase a little bit because you start understanding. So it is different tools that you can do so that your confidence starts growing. So that was just an example. In terms of authenticity, we work with poetry. So because I think it's necessary, and I help the client to find their own voice, find their own words through different activities, and also to question the beliefs they may have about their expression. So, for example, I find that for people who have, for example, Spanish as a heritage language, so they may live in United States and they have their origin is Hispanic. They come from, their parents come from a Latin American country, but they do not speak in Spanish well, and they find themselves in this in-between place. They are not North American enough, they are not Latino enough, so they feel their confidence is not good, it's not very high, and self-esteem is not very high. So how do I help them? By questioning, then start questioning these beliefs. Why am I not North American enough? Or why do I think that I am not Hispanic enough? And disintegrating these beliefs, and then we start finding our own particular way of expressing, and that comes from I suggest exercises that can, or that are done in between the sessions, that are mostly around poetry and finding your own vocabulary, that your own images, because I think that we have, according to our experience, let's say, for example, how would you describe a breakup, right? Well, every person is going to describe in a different way because their senses in that particular moment were sensing different things. So it is just bringing your own experience, bringing your senses to be able to express your experience. And that is about finding your own authentic voice, your own imagery in a way. And poetry therapy sessions, they are therapy. So, and it is developmental therapy. So through poetry. So I would come with a poem for you to read. We would read the poem, and that is going, and you're going to understand and interpret the poem in an individual way, because that's what we do. There is no one single interpretation of anything, of any piece of art. It is the same. So poetry, that poem is going to evoke something in you. You're going to understand that poem in an individual way, and that is connected with something that you believe, or something that it is relevant for you. And then from there, we start doing free writing, because it is proven that when you try to write poetry, you are accessing your symbols, you are accessing the unconscious, and that is the sweet spot for this therapy. Because and then in the moment you share that poem with me in this case, or with a group. I do group poetry therapy sessions. It's even better when you share that with the group. The other people or the therapist interpretation is kind of mirroring back, and then you are aware. You are starting being aware of all these unconscious things, of all these shadows, of all these things that you were not really touching.
Yeah.
And that's the way, just to be more self-aware.
Yeah, I love your approach. I wish I knew you 10 years ago.
Thank you.
So what do you do when you're not working with client, or you're not writing poem, or you're not dealing with language?
I go in nature. I like walking. I go for walks, and ideally I like to go in nature. I am very attracted to the sea, so I find that's my sweet space. And I also like to go drinking coffee. Go for a coffee is my treat, and that's what I do. That's what I do. I like to have a very slow life, a slow paced life, and just, sitting in the garden looking at the birds. I discovered, since I have a garden, which is recent, that's just like meditation. It's good for the soul.
It is. Where our audience can find you? I know you have a YouTube channel, you have a book, and website.
I have my website. So Maria Ortega Garcia, which is my full name, .com. And then I am in Instagram, and that's same maria.ortega.garcia, YouTube, the same name. And I'm there. I'm online.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoy talking to you.